In order. This public meeting is designated as part of the environmental process for getting the project approved by the Division of Water. There's certain things we have to do. We have to take into consideration a bunch of environmental concerns, which we'll talk about. But in order to get the last piece of the puzzle, we have to have a public meeting and get them the tear sheet and affidavit, the minutes, and any questions and any concerns that came up, who attended, and if there's any public comment. So, project description, we have 3 contracts on the project. There's 3 components. Jump in here anywhere. Okay.
All right, I will. Hey, Rich.
Hello.
Oh, Rich is here. Good.
Yeah.
This is Rich Smith, project engineer.
Hello, how are you? Good.
Oh, you do have a
I'll set that up. Why don't you, we're talking about the project, you'll explain the components.
All right.
From the plant on down. That's kind of
So
going
you started
backwards.
already?
we just did just now.
Okay.
Basically said we're doing this because we are required for environmental feedback for that last component. So that's kind of where we left off.
All right.
This will give you a little visual aid on where it starts and where it ends.
Well, I'll kind of jump in while they're installing. There are 3 contracts as this whole piece. We did have an environmental study done on all of the project areas. There's essentially no impact at the location of the existing Potter Shop pump station because that's all already existing. We are just upgrading that. Similar to the work at the Town Creek wastewater treatment plant, all of that work is still in the same footprint of the original plant. So we weren't going to be impacting anything environmentally in any new way. We're existing. With the trunk line, we are going as much as possible along the same route of all the existing trunk line. But because we are going larger, we are needing to widen that impact area and putting in a new line side by side in a lot of places just to be able to continue service.
Once you orient them.
Yes, keep all the customers in service. This area is actually, if you're familiar with Potter Shop, just off of 150, but this area is serving our east service territory, everything along the Rowan Creek watershed. That includes the Spring Hill subdivision, everything along Highway 245 behind the movie theater, serves Lowe's, all of the development along that corridor, on up towards Filiatro Lane, Tullamore, the residential properties, even Woodline Springs neighborhoods, as well as the Nelson County Industrial Park. And this also bleeds over into the Mill Creek area because a lot of these areas that are served are pumped back into this trunk to deliver it to the wastewater plant down here.
So point out, if you would, a major road for me other than Bluegrass Parkway.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
So I can get my bearings.
This is 245.
Okay.
And this is Springfield Road, US 150.
Okay, gotcha.
So this is Maywood. Right here. Here's Lowe's, Walmart.
Okay.
Kind of takes you on around.
Yeah, I'm with you now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. I know it's very small and we've got shading to boot over top. So that's essentially the reason for the project, is that we've had growth in these areas, and the original trunk line was put in, I believe, in the early 80s when American Greetings came to town. So at the time, American Greetings is even off of the page. We weren't sure, so much of this didn't even exist, out in this direction. So build it and they will come, and everything kind of developed up around where that industrial area, those jobs came, neighborhoods popped up. Kind of became a logical place for our community to grow. Same with the industrial park. So now that we're moving forward, I'll fast forward a little bit, as we've grown, we have encountered wet weather overflows at the Potter Shop pump station, which basically is telling us that under rain events we are a very karst system, we're very hilly, we have lots of little streams and branches, and that allows groundwater to get into our sewer system. And so we do a lot of projects that you will see moving forward in our budget that try to eliminate that inflow and infiltration, sealing up manholes, trying to keep that water out as best we can. So as we're trying to get back capacity, we're also trying to gain capacity for just the actual use of the sewer system. So that's kind of what spawned originally this need as we began to do camera investigative work, flow monitoring, kind of just seeing what was happening, and it kind of all led us to believe that, okay, this isn't big enough and the pumps need to be bigger, and then we're having a world where people are flushing more and more things down that cause mechanical failures and a lot of maintenance and kind of health risk at the plant. So we're trying to add screening at the pump station as well as at the Towel Creek treatment plant to help remove a lot of that rags and wipes that seem to cause a lot of maintenance and mechanical failures, to get it out of the system before it gets into the treatment plant and can create a blockage in the pipelines. Just trying to add those improvements in there and again get more efficiency out of our infrastructure.
Now, our Bardstown Bourbon Company and Lux Row, are they tied into this?
Yes.
Okay, and Takigawa will be as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the new OWL facility.
Yes, and the
Yeah,
new
well,
Kentucky Owl will also eventually discharge into this trunk line. So there were some factors that we were trying to predict, based on our existing growth when we first started looking at what size we should make this. Rich did a really good job in HDR and his team and his group of modelers that they have to try to predict where's the growth going to be, what can we anticipate. And then some of it was just a guess. Where are undeveloped areas that make sense for us to continue to grow in that area? Because again, I'm really trying to create some comprehensive planning as a community for our customers such that we're growing where infrastructure can easily be served rather than let's go develop and build 500 homes 10 miles from town and try to pump all of that back in. I want to try to minimize that if at all possible because A, it's not efficient, and B, it creates a lot of unforeseen consequences to the folks who live at that discharge point.
Actually, Rich and Jessica gave a presentation on the modeling of the system at the Water Professionals Conference in Nashville.
Yeah.
So the development that City Council approved last year, that was like 80 duplexes, I think, out off
Yes.
Fletcher Lane.
That was all predicted. We
Yeah.
already kind of planned for all of that.
That would be a lot.
And everything, again, we tried to create everything that I believe is red is currently undeveloped, but we assigned some growth factors or some flow factors associated with what that would be. This, again, does not have infinite capacity. At some point we will need to create another trunk line over in this waste shed and create another trunk rather than keep pushing it over into this basin. So we'll have to have its own system eventually to get to the plant. But for this project, this is what kind of our immediate, what I would call the 15-year plan would be. Hopefully it lasts 15 years. Maybe not till I retire. I can't hope to guess quite that long.
You're not
A girl can dream, but I'm not that optimistic.
You're not allowed to retire.
I know, eventually. One of these days. I got a while. But that's kind of the project area and what stemmed us to move forward and create this project. This is kind of just where our town seems to be growing the most and creating those impacts and making sure that we are, environmentally responsible with that too, making sure that we don't just keep allowing growth and not have the infrastructure to handle it, and making sure that it doesn't spill over into the streams and waterways, which again we ended up doing. There was what was the name of the environmental team that did the study. Is it?
Cultural resource.
Cultural resource.
The archaeological study.
Gotcha. So they did do an archaeological survey, environmental study. The areas of impact were pretty minimal with respect to wetlands and those areas.
So
You may
they-
want to touch on that, Rich.
Cultural Resources did the archaeological survey, and then HDR did the environmental. So they didn't find anything with the archaeological, nothing of concern. And then on the environmental, we got a number of stream crossings associated with the project. There's 2 small wetlands, one of which we're kind of skirting by, and the other one is going to be impacted, but it's very small in terms of acreage, so it shouldn't cause any real permitting issues. So yeah, that work's all been done.
Well, we did,
Reports have been
the
written.
city did pay, we're taking some trees down. So when you take bat habitat down, the city did have to pay into a conservation fund.
Yes.
For those trees were being eliminated, and we've done that. And
The Imperiled Bat Conservation Fund.
so, there's so many bats, I have a hard time saying that they're impaired.
We are rich in bat
Rich in
habitat
bats.
here in Nelson County.
When I worked at the drama, we got them over in our sets over the winter.
Oh, yes, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're great for mosquitoes. I
Right.
mean, they do a great job of eating up all those mosquitoes, but
Not so good with hoop skirts.
no, I wouldn't imagine.
Rich, did you want to toss in what size lines we're replacing with what size lines?
Yeah,
It's on
so-
your contract 3 on your,
Okay.
So we've broken this project into 3 different contracts. One will be at the wastewater plant, which is going to be primarily the screens, and then eliminating a hydraulic bottleneck, which is a 24-inch pipe that'll be replaced with 36-inch for about 1,000 feet. So that's contract 1. Contract 2 is the work at the Potter Shop pump station. So we're going to upgrade the existing capacity, put new pumps in, new valve vault, electrical building, and we're going to increase the capacity to about 4.6 million gallons per day. That'll be contract 2, and then contract 3 is the trunk sewer itself. So 1 and 2 are going to be ready
John Bland.
to bid here very shortly. They'll be advertised for bids, probably bidding. I'll talk to Jessica about that tonight, get the exact dates, but probably around the end of February. And then contract 3 is going to be a little bit longer to get ready just because of all the easements that have to be obtained. Easements and
Good afternoon,
permits. So contract 3 is
How are you? I guess it was too
turn around, we got
cold.
some
Stand
public
them all
here.
pump station is down here. So trunk sewer is the highlighted area is what's going to be replaced. So this existing line is all 12-inch up to this point, and then this line that goes over
You
to
see-
the industrial park is 8, and then it goes to 12 again at the industrial park. So we're going to eliminate this 8-inch part and put in 12. And then this lower portion will be 24, and then this portion up here will be 18. And that's been sized with the hydraulic modeling program to account for all the existing flow plus the growth that's going to happen in all the shaded areas. So it's a 20-year design. So it's a pretty significant upgrade in pipe size, and then it's going to carry all that flow to the upgraded pump station, and then we'll utilize the existing force mains, the 2 that are there, 12 and 8, to go over here to the interceptor and on down to the treatment plant. I think Jessica already stated most of the reasons for the project. The hydraulic bottleneck at the wastewater plant. The screens are going to remove rags and debris at the wastewater plant that currently it gets ground up and it remains in the waste stream. And then as it goes into the lagoons, sometimes the rags and debris bind themselves back together and end up clogging up equipment in the treatment process. So the screens are going to get the rags and debris out. So that's going to be a benefit. There's a sanitary sewer overflow currently at the Potter Shop pump station. So that means that, it's a recurring issue where the pump station can't keep up and it overflows. So this project is going to address that problem. As we talked about, provide capacity for current and projected flows. And then this trunk sewer, this 12-inch line that was put in, I guess back in the early 90s or 80s, whatever, has a lot of defects in it. So it's a lot of cracked pipe. It's letting a lot of infiltration and inflow in to the sewer.
What causes cracked pipe?
Well, it was partly, I think, the material of the sewer, and probably part of it was installation, and part of it's age, kind of a combination of factors.
The pipes are different materials now.
Yes, that was PVC truss pipe. I don't think it's commonly used anymore, and it won't be used on this project. But yeah, has a lot of existing defects, which is one reason we did look at possibly reusing the existing sewer, just laying parallel to it, but we elected against that because you have so much defective pipe that needs to be replaced. So
will it be pulled out and replaced, or?
Well, portions of it will be, and then portions of it will just be abandoned in place. So there's segments where we're going in the same alignment, and there's areas where we're going about 10 feet off.
In those narrow valleys down Rowan Creek, there's not much room for construction, so you're going to have to
It's pretty,
take your best route.
It's one reason there's so many stream crossings. I think there's 13 stream crossings on the project. And initially you might ask why, but then when you walk the job and you see the narrow valleys and where the sewer has to go, then you realize.
That's how it is.
Yeah, that's just how it is.
Little creek.
yeah.
It is, that's the easiest way.
Fortunately, the division of water just sends those right back when you try to do it that way.
They like 50 feet from the creek bank. There's a lot of places you can't get 50 feet.
In some places.
Just in case I leak, get back in the sewer, in the water system.
Well, I guess I think it's, it's best to keep the waters pristine, keep all the infrastructure away from it, but it's not realistic in a lot of cases, especially with gravity sewers. They have to go where the low elevation is, so just a lot of places you try to get as far as you can practically, but you have to.
And you want to try to keep it away too, if you can, just so that if there are incidences of flood, that water doesn't, overflow the banks and then try to go back into your system, that I don't, again, I'm not trying to treat flood waters or all of that rainwater. So, but again, a lot of our area, that's just impractical, because we want to try to get as much of the waste stream to be gravity and not using pumps and energy, and so again, you have to get it to flow downhill, and that's where it makes the most sense to serve the most folks.
Jessica, just curious, how wide is your existing right-of-way, like on the main trunk line? What do you all have access to? And will you need a lot wider right-of-way from parts of it?
We will. There were, during the original construction, I believe there was a 30-foot construction easement that was allowing us to get in and place the sewer main. But after going back and looking at the permanent easements, a lot of those were, that 30 feet got dwindled down to 15 upon completion. Well, that's not quite enough room. I mean, especially since the trunk lines are typically deeper. You're not just little 4 foot deep. You need to be able to dig a trench safely and install that with, confined space to make sure trench safety and so forth. So that I'm going to be asking for some additional permanent easement. Most of this line, I won't say all, but a lot of it's that 15 feet. There's some areas that run through some newer neighborhoods that extend, that it is a full 20. where it's currently an 8-inch line. I think a lot of that is a 20-foot. That's generally what we require today, just because we've kind of learned. It's fine whenever you don't need to do anything else other than clean it, but when you need to replace it, dig it up and make a repair, it's hard to stay in that, small 15 feet. It's really hard to do. So we will be going back to the property owners and asking for that. A lot of that is in, I don't say floodways, but areas that are really not able to be built in, otherwise. So I'm hoping that we'll get cooperation from those property owners, because it does allow that property to be served and does have some value. I'm hoping we'll get some support with that. Because again, at some point, if we don't make these improvements, we won't be able to, on new development, to write the letter to the Division of Water because we have the ability to serve this without reoccurring overflow. So we have to be really careful about what's truthful, because it can come back and cause fines and other penalties on the ratepayer, and we don't really want to get into that situation. So hopefully we'll get some support from the property owners. There's a few of them here. One or two.
We've just got a small part.
Just a small piece.
Jessica mentioned
You got quite a bit.
Jessica mentioned the floodplains. A lot of this sewer is in the floodplain of Rowan Creek, so it'll be installed with watertight frames and covers to keep the creek water out of the sewer as much as possible.
What impact the sewer service during that time for the people that are around there? Will it at all?
Everything will have to be constructed with existing customers left in service. So if anyone's taken out of service, it'll just be for brief periods.
Just brief periods, okay.
So the contractor is going to have to utilize bypass pumping as he's building the sewer to be able to pump around. And then they'll have to put in, segments of the sewer will have to be put in service as they're constructed.
So probably 24 hours or less, or?
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah,
it should be less,
I
yeah.
just wonder whether there's some backflow from that, if that's the case, yeah.
Yeah, there may be occasions where, somebody can't use their facilities for a few hours, but it shouldn't be prolonged.
It should be, yeah. If they do a good job, it shouldn't be more than a couple hours at a time while they just reconnect sewer services, for those individuals. Although, because this is a trunk line, there are not a terrible amount of individual services into this line. Typically, they're going into a gravity line that then could be bypass pumped around. So hopefully we won't see a lot of that. I won't say there won't be any, but it's going to be a lot less than in a typical, say, subdivision improvement project where we'd have to go in and, line a whole sewer line or something like that.
Does everybody have your cell phone numbers just in case?
Absolutely. That's why I said question.
I didn't say that.
So I think we've covered most of the items on the agenda, getting down to the project costs. So we got
Talk from funding here.
Yeah, so the funding, so we got total project cost, that includes all three contracts, is $7 million roughly, and about $5.75 million of that will go to construction. We've got two funding sources. We've got an EDA grant, which is in the works for $1.6 million. That's the U.S. Economic Development Administration, which is part of the Department of Commerce. So they are shut down right now, as is most of the government. But those grants are given based on economic development. So this project and all the industries that are being served and some of the new ones coming to town made it possible for the city to get that grant.
Let me toss this in there. EDA, the reason you guys were so attractive for EDA is they have two components to make your project competitive. One is private investment. You guys had multi-millions, hundreds of millions of dollars of that. And you also had job creation. Those are the two factors that they use, and you guys were way up there. So when we got this project started and just looked around at how the economy was going, it became a very attractive option to try to get EDA grant funds. And traditionally, EDA gives about $1 million in grant funds, but the city is going to get $1.6 million, and that's based on all the good stuff going on. So,
Yeah, that's a really good grant. And it's not 100% finalized, but everything looks like it's ready, it's falling into place. It just needs
It's
to-
in Washington. It goes through Atlanta, which is a regional office. And from what I heard from Bob Hunter, the attorneys got through with it there and sent it to Washington. So it's floundering somewhere in DC as long as everything is right now.
It's pretty certain.
Yeah.
It's about as certain as we can get at this point. And then the remainder of the project will be funded with the KIA loan, Clean Water State Revolving Fund, $5.4 million.
That will be a 2% loan for 20 years, which is a really good interest rate, and the city goes before the KIA board February the 7th to ask for approval, and if it gets approved then it'll go to the Capital Projects Bond Oversight Committee, which is part of the Legislative Research Commission, at their next meeting, and then they'll give you a conditional commitment letter and grant agreement. So
Yeah, you'll see that once it goes through that process, I'll bring that back before the council, and you will see that agreement paperwork to enter into an agreement with the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority, and the mayor will be asking you for authority, the council, to enter into that agreement. So you'll probably see it 3 times before we actually draw the first penny from it, just because there are several processes that have to take place to get to that point, but we're almost to the end here where it going before the board, and that will allow us to, I believe, begin bidding or advertising for bid 2 of the smaller portions of the project, not the trunk line, but the pump station work and the work at the plant.
maybe we should tell them at this point the Infrastructure Authority money covers all the components: wastewater plant, Potter Shop pump station, and line replacement for the trunk sewers. Okay, the EDA money is only on the trunk sewers. So if we have to wait a little while for that, the treatment plant and the pump station can move along.
Just, we're new, this is our second meeting. How long has it taken us to get to this point, like the process of whenever we started it?
We started design. Probably
Some change.
a year if you want to count the study that we did. We initially did a study of this area and the hydraulic model of the sewers at work before we got into the actual design, so it's been about a year.
Doesn't happen super fast.
You guys have a lot of good work.
Yeah.
A lot of good work.
Thank you.
We still have some work to do, but I think we're seeing some movement at this point, which is good.
So the KIA meeting is on February 7th, at which time the loan should go ahead and proceed, hopefully from that point.
Then you'll have to pass your resolution, all that, enter in the agreement like Jessica was saying, and then it's a paperwork puzzle after that.
So I think that covers about everything we had, unless there are questions.
Yeah, I'm a layman, non-engineering type. What, from the existing infrastructure to the replacement, what sort of upgrade, how much capacity is being added?
Quite a bit.
Approximately.
So the pump station, start with the pump station. So right now it pumps, I think, around 700 gallons per minute. And it's going to be able to pump 3,200 gallons per minute. So that's pretty significant upgrade. And then the trunk sewer going from 12-inch to 24-inch. Just a tremendous increase in capacity. And of course, that's designed for a 20-year projected flows from all these developments, these pink areas on the map that aren't developed yet.
Potential, yeah.
So, yeah, it's a pretty significant increase in capacity. We're pretty well going to max out what that pump station can do on this site.
Yes.
Yeah, if we need to go bigger, then as Jessica mentioned earlier,
They're
probably be looking
different
at
gravity.
developing another project and taking some of this flow that's pumped over and taking it off the system and pumping directly to the wastewater plant. That'd be a future project.
I'm also hoping that we'll gain back actual waste stream capacity
Right.
by putting in a watertight trunk line as well. I'm hoping that we're able to eliminate where that truss pipe is like cracked in the top and on the sides that's letting in a lot of groundwater. You know, times like this when the ground is completely saturated and you've got that headwater on there, I think we're just getting a lot of just leaking. I'm treating a lot of water I don't need to treat.
Right.
So I'm hoping we gain that back. That's my goal. Nothing's ever perfect, but that's my hope. Can't get all of it out, never will. It's impossible. But I'm hoping it's not gonna hurt by any means.
This is another kind of out there question. You were talking about the other areas to the right side of the map, you know, which would be another trunk line at some point in the future. Do you anticipate that would be gravity feed or it's going to be, you know, force main sort of sewer system?
It would be,
Both.
you put in as much gravity as you could, but then
Right.
eventually you'd have to have a pump station to pump it over.
Okay.
Yeah,
And what's
before
the-
it gets to the
what's the sewer
beach,
shed
we have
down
to have
there?
a pump
That's
to get
milk.
it to a wastewater plant.
Mill Creek. Is that sewer shed? Yeah. So, yeah. But you try to site the pump station and low in the
Low spot.
watershed so that you can drain as much by gravity as you can.
Right. Without having to pump.
Anything else?
Any other questions?
I appreciate y'all coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys.
Did the sign-in sheet get around?
Yeah, it's right.
I think so. George, did you want
Did
to
you sign
sign?
it?
No.
No.
Sign.
Welcome to tell us you were here.
Well, and
I wish you had more intelligent questions, but being have to do them, just take on this.
speaking for HDR, we appreciate the opportunity to work with the city, so it's been good.
Thank you all.
And if anybody wants to look at the actual route itself, you're welcome to look at, we've got all 3 sets of plans.
With the map.
Wanted
The
to,
plans are up here.
yeah,
You want-
flip through and see where it crosses the property. Like I said, in most cases, we're going right adjacent. We're not really changing much of anything on the route.